Good afternoon, everybody. Coming at you live a little bit earlier today, about 1 p.m. instead of my normal 8 or 9 o'clock. And maybe one day I'll get, it lined up of when I exactly do these things. But, I am a small business owner. I have a very difficult time with my schedule sometimes as far as making sure it lines out. So coming at you guys a bit earlier today, but thanks for joining us. All the same, as always, remember to hit the share button, share it everywhere, share it in several places. I thank you for supporting us. You can come by Brood here in Lexington. You can also buy online at broodco.com. Now, you'll notice, a lot of you guys watching this live will notice I've got a bandana around my neck. And you say, Andrew, have you been wearing a mask in public? I'm here to tell you, no. I wear this bandana so people know I'm not wearing a mask because I don't have one. I'm doing it because I don't want to. See, I like to make it very clear to people. Now, a lot of people have been feeling the anxiety of going out. I was reading a post from one of our friends today online where he's talking about how he went out without a mask for the first time. The reason why, of course, he's doing this is because House Joint Resolution 77 has passed and became law. Technically speaking, all the governor's mandates, other than the ones in House Joint Resolution 77, such as the mask mandate, such as the closures of business mandates, such as the occupancy mandates for businesses, all those daycare ones, technically are gone, right? They're not legal. Now you say, Andrew, why did you say technically? Well, because Beshear is crying his way, and of course we all know he's already filed with Judge Shepard, waiting to be heard. It'll only be probably a few days till it's heard by Judge Shepard, and we imagine it will be knocked down. So I haven't really celebrated, even though legally right now you don't have to wear a mask. Though if you're somebody like me, maybe you haven't been wearing a mask regardless for the past several weeks as well, and hey, I think that's your personal choice. I think the numbers are speaking for themselves that masks don't work. But, however, right now, legally, you do not need to wear a mask. It is not in place. But we have not made a big old announcement about it simply because I think it creates some confusion when he comes in and gets it injunctified. Then you got to go down explaining that. But assuming if perhaps in the next couple of days we don't see the judge making movements on it, I'm just going to start saying, hey, it's over. Take them off. I might run around with scissors. Just start cutting them off people's faces. Just run up, cut the band. Falls right off the ear, right? Free yourselves. Free your faces. Anyways. But Andy's crying. He's not just crying about him losing his power to the legislative branch as it's supposed to be. Shocker that he's like, hey, man, the executive branch, we're losing all of our power. Yeah, exactly. Now, we have heard some of the Republicans when we're talking about, why aren't you enforcing these all the way? I've been getting reports that some of these Republican legislators are going back to their party meetings saying things like, well, we want to be careful how much we restrain his power because one day we're going to have a Republican governor. What now? Huh? What? A Republican governor? Yeah, sure, one day we will, and you know what? They also shouldn't have this much power. I'm sorry. If you think to yourself for 1 second that you think it's okay we have this much power, that's the problem. That's been the problem with Republicans all along. When they get the power, they don't do the things they tell us they're going to do. Remove it from people and shrink government. They think, well, hold on now that we have, as Representative Massey, Federal Representative Massey says all the time, once they get a hold of the power, they don't want to cast it into the flames. So we have these Republican representatives saying, hey, we didn't control the governor because one day we might have a Republican governor. Shame on you. Shame on you. You are supposed to be destroying that which got us to this point. You got voted in to end this. I don't think we care what initial, whether it be an R, a D, an L, an I, is next to a governor's name. We do not want them to have this much power. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we all think that one man somehow should get to tell you what you can or can't do. But I'm sorry, whether I agree with that man or not, I do not believe government and one man should be ruling by edict. But hey, call me crazy. So they're running back to their meetings and saying these things. But while they're doing that and the governor's crying and we've got HJR 77 ending mask mandates, he's crying that Indiana has ended their mask mandate. He says, oh, we're going to be bringing COVID cases into Kentucky. He should be thanking them. He's right now has to make up cases. He's probably on the phone with Cuomo like, hey, man, you got some of them COVID cases I can get down here? Our case count's falling. We need to get more people in here with COVID. I'm losing my power. Because what happens? The flatter the curve gets, the more people sit around and start to agree with people like us, the crazy people. More people have come in and been like, you know, Andrew, at first I kind of thought you're a little crazy. I thought, well, you know, he's protecting his business. I understand that. But now he's taking the stand against it. I think he might be a little off his rocker. And then I started to, and when you called for his impeachment, I said, oh, come on now. I don't think he needs to get impeached. A lot of people have come around to it. Maybe it was when he threatened to throw legislators into jail, or maybe it's the fact that he refuses to end these mandates despite the fact the numbers speak differently. I don't know. But he's freaking out. He's freaking out about Indiana's mask mandate, but I'd be thankful if I was him that I can keep padding my numbers. What do I mean by that? Well, we've been talking about it, but so there's this audit completed, and this audit was completed on Kentucky numbers, and then out of nowhere, they just started looking at our numbers and adding in deaths and adding in cases out of nowhere. But the problem as they're adding it is that they're not adding it on the days that they occurred to backtrack the number so it looks accurate. So what you have instead is when you look at these COVID case count charts for Kentucky, and when you look at them here and you see them, you see a COVID case count, and I'm going to share my screen for you guys here. I know if you're listening on, don't worry about that. I'm going to share you guys a screen here. Let's see. Oh, Chrome tab here. Okay. Here we go. I'm going to share this screen for you guys. So you can see here is our case count. You know, you see your spikes and everything else, and it goes way down here. But when you look at our death count for Kentucky, when you look at our COVID death count, I wish I could Google better, but, you know, whatever. When you look at your COVID death count for Kentucky, look at that huge spike. There on March 18th into it, look at this spike of deaths. If you looked at this here in Kentucky, the deadliest month, according to our numbers, is the month of March, April. It's almost the highest it's ever been. Why is that? Well, it's quite simply because he is padding those numbers up. He's dropping them now. He's on TV even saying this person died on Christmas, telling us this sob story about a person dying on Christmas, which is terrible. It's terrible to have anybody die on Christmas. But that was like 4 months ago. Why is it going into today's numbers? So he's crying at Indiana for ending their mask mandate. Meanwhile, he needs those COVID numbers. He needs to keep padding the numbers. I don't know. I literally can't tell you. And it looks like neither can any news source on whether or not there is a person a day or not dying from COVID in Kentucky. Because you have such low numbers of deaths at around 10 a day, 11 a day, sometimes much higher, sometimes lower. But you see these numbers and you say, wow, that's crazy. But then you start seeing him talking about deaths back in Christmas and audits, and we had to throw in deaths from here. How many people died from COVID yesterday? You know that's the number we want, Andy. You know that's the number that's important. You know that's the number you make decisions on. You know that's the number that shows us trends. But yet, you continue to drop things from months ago. Do not tell me it's not about control when you're doing that. Because if it was not about control, you would be dropping those numbers on the death counts from on the days they occurred, and we wouldn't see that gigantic spiking I just showed you in our death numbers. But of course, people don't pay attention. I'll give you a great example. If you ask the average Kentuckian, how many people under 30 in Kentucky have died from COVID? They're going to guess a number around 50, 100. That could be as high as 200, 300, right? Now, according to the CDC, and for people to understand, the state says there is 6 under 30 who have died from COVID, but the CDC disagrees with that number. They say there are 3 that have died from COVID under 30. 3. Meanwhile, though, because the governor is having an issue, the numbers are dropping. But the vaccine appointments are going unfulfilled. I read an article yesterday about how hundreds of vaccine appointments are going unfilled here in Kentucky. Why is that? Well, it's because the people are most at risk that, hey, if I'll be honest, and I hear you guys all the time, you guys might want to throw me off a building as I say this one. All right, so don't attack me. But I'm going to be honest. If I was like 75 years old right now, I might take that COVID vaccine. I tell you why. COVID does have a high death rate among 75, 80. So does the vaccine. It has a lot of risk to it. And it's a weighed out thing. But I tell you this much. And I know you guys will probably kill me, right? You guys hate me for saying that. But, whatever. Anyways, but I tell you this much. If you are under the age of like 40 and you're taking this vaccine, you are being feared into doing it. And the reason why I bring this up is because starting Monday, anybody 16 or older can get vaccinated in Kentucky, according to what the governor just said. And like I said, I know you guys are going to flip tables and be like, Andrew just said get vaccinated if you're 80 years old. Well, you're not living that much longer anyways. I'm sorry I said it, okay? I know. But hey, you know what? It's worth the risk because if I get COVID, I don't have necessarily as good of an outcome compared to people who are younger. I'm just saying. That's what I'm seeing, but, that's just me. But, so, outside of that, though, if you look under 30 and you're seeing only 3 deaths from COVID, we're actually, according to VAERS or whatever we see, however you say it, we're actually seeing what looks like most likely more deaths from the vaccine under 30 than COVID. Not because the vaccine is necessarily killing swaths of people, but because COVID just isn't. It's not hard to beat the number 3. It's just not hard. But here we are throwing at ages 16 plus eligible for a vaccine. Exactly according to the CDC, 0 people under the age of 20 have died from COVID. According to the CDC, 0 people under 20 have died from COVID, according to the CDC. Why in the world would you vaccinate your 16-year-old child? There is literally nothing but risks and no benefits on the other side of things. These are just the numbers I'm looking at. I'm looking at the numbers. I see the numbers. That's what it says. You see, you don't have to worry about appointments going unfulfilled and a marketing campaign and sending out text alerts about, hey, get your COVID appointment in, when it's a truly deadly virus people are worried about. But the governor's crying. He says, hey, go get vaccinated. He's padding our numbers. Crying about Indiana. Unmasking. Should be thanking them. And with that, we see an article yesterday saying, hey, we're on the upswing in Kentucky. We're on the upswing. And it's like, how long do they think they can keep this going? I mean, you had Dr. Fauci the other day sitting there saying, well, this new variant out of UK avoids testing. So now you have a virus that is asymptomatic. You can't test for. It's almost like it doesn't exist sometimes. if that's the case. If it's asymptomatic and it doesn't show up on a test, why are we even worried about it? I don't know. Call me, like I said, maybe I'm crazy. I probably am crazy, but there you go. Now, moving on, though, on this same thing as fear mongering, talking about young people who are just not at risk from COVID, that we are playing games with their health with. And speaking of playing games, we see an article running that Kentucky college students are struggling with mental health issues as well as employment issues, which is not a shocker. I mean, how often, let me ask you guys, how many times would you have to be told you're killing grandmother for going to go visit your friend in their dorm room before you start to mentally break down? How many times would you have to be told that your actions are literally killing others? Remember, when I'm serving coffee, I'm killing grandma. That's what I was told. Would you have mental health issues? I would. Right? You got tons of unemployed people. You got tons of people out here that can't find jobs. So naturally, the college student is having a hard time finding a job. They just can't find one. So, of course, they're worried about it. They see their parents losing jobs and businesses. They're worried about how college is going to be paid for. So they're struggling with these mental health issues. But, of course, this is a little bit of a setup because you know what they're going to do? They're going to say, hey, I should have free college. And guess who's going to come on in on their white knight to make sure that college student doesn't have to worry about how they're going to make ends meet? You guessed it. It's going to be the Democrats on the government horse that you paid for galloping in to save the day. And I can't imagine how this is going to end badly. I just can't. And on that subject of galloping in on the white horse of government taxpayer-funded horses, I have a great example for you of how this is playing out nationwide. What we're seeing is we saw a personal bankruptcy going down 30% during 2020. You're seeing, of course, mortgage foreclosures going down. There's a moratorium on them. For some reason, we extended out unemployment benefits. We sent out single checks because people needed the help. We spent $2 trillion to help people, but yet you still can't evict people. It's one or the other, right? Either we're helping them and they're able to make it, or they can't be evicted. If we are spending this much taxpayer dollars to the point that other employers and myself are having issues finding staff when we have massive unemployment because you make more to not work than you do to work right now, why are we also extending out eviction moratorium? Well, I'll tell you why. Couplefold. One, it gives government the ability to come in and say, look at me, saving the day for you. I'm saving the day for you. You can come over here. So you got personal bankruptcy down 30%. You got corporate bankruptcy. You've got mortgages down. But you know what went up massively? Corporate bankruptcy. Business bankruptcy is up 40%. So personal bankruptcy goes down 30%. Corporate bankruptcy goes up 40%. What is happening? People are not working. There's less companies out there. People are not working. And the government has come in and propped them up to the point where everybody's living, especially on certain end, better than they were before, taking the money from these people and redistributing it and giving them a taste of that so-called government cheese to get them at a point where they are so reliant on the government for everything, they are literally buying votes to a point. And they're creating a culture that has some crazy ideas. And I'll give you an example. There's a band called Eve 6. Now, a lot of you probably don't know that band, but you may know the song. They came out in the 90s. They've got several songs. One is, the one where it's like, put your heart in a blender. watch it spin round to a beautiful oblivion, rendezvous, and I'm through with you. I am not a singer, so do not ask me to sing, but that is one of their songs, so hopefully you understand that. Well, Eve 6 put out a tweet saying that if you were a landlord, you were no longer allowed to come to their concerts because your money is paid for by stealing. Because they are anti-landlord. And why are they anti-landlord? Well, quite frankly, it's this idea that the fact that I own property that then you rent from me makes me a bad person. Because somehow I'm taking advantage of people. Now, I personally am not a landlord. In fact, I have landlords. I have several landlords because I rent several commercial properties as well as a personal property. And in that process of doing so, my landlords, I never once stopped to think they're evil, mean people. And in fact, as we demonize these landlords, and you're seeing that by them passing these eviction mortuaries, we're not bothering. We think of these landlords a lot of times as these terrible people. A lot of times they're grandma and grandpa that own maybe 5 or 6 properties, and this is their income. They're not necessarily rich people. And they're not there to take advantage of you. They simply own a property and they offer it up for rent because you don't qualify for a bank loan. Or if you're somebody in my position where, hey, I like renting here, I don't like the maintenance side of things. I'll be honest. I like having somebody else come cut my grass and everything else, and it's all included in my rent. And if my water heater breaks, I don't have to worry about it. That's just me, though, right? I'm not saying property is a good investment. It is. I don't think badly of my landlord. But that's what these people are pushing on you. They're pushing onto you a class warfare system. Class system where you're at war, where these people hate these people because you have to pay them money to use their property. And so nobody stops to ask as we push on this eviction mortuarium, how many people are going bankrupt? How many people are unable to survive themselves because their income is off this property? Am I saying they should necessarily be evicting people? No, it's a very difficult situation. But I would say right now, why are we spending $2 trillion, which, by the way, our lost economy from COVID was only around $500 billion, half a trillion. So we're spending 4 times the amount of money that we've lost to help out these people who are suffering from COVID, and then turning around and saying, hey, we're also not going to let you pay your rent. You don't need to worry about paying your rent. And we're going to let these people go bankrupt, those evil, mean top people at the top. Oh, we're going to let these businesses, these small businesses go bankrupt, these terrible business owners who have tons of money. We're going to let them go bankrupt because they're terrible people. Meanwhile, while the largest corporations are getting richer, we're seeing, like I said earlier, corporate bankruptcy up 40%. It's a bad thought process, and it's a problem. It certainly is a problem. To top it off, Eve 6, on top of saying if your landlord if your landlord don't come, they said if you bring an eviction notice, which I don't know exactly how they're pulling off eviction notices, but if you bring an eviction notice, your ticket's free. Pays for your ticket. So not only are we pretending that landlords are evil, we're rewarding people for welching on their agreements. We're rewarding people for making commitments that they can't follow through with. We're saying, hey, you know what? Screw that person that owns that property that you're living there. Yeah, they got bills to pay and everything else that they pay on the property. And hey, you know what? If your water heater breaks and they don't come fix it right away, they're terrible slumlords and terrible people. But also, let's throw in an incentive for you to misbehave, for you to not honor your contracts. And this results in some pretty terrible laws. There's a story out in California of a couple that paid cash for a home for themselves. They spent scrouch, saved, cashed in 401ks, and paid $400,000 for a home out in California. California has some of the most protective eviction laws because, of course, it is a lefty ideology that landlords are terrible, mean, evil people. And so they have some of the toughest eviction laws. And so you have an individual that got paid $400,000 for a home, and you have this couple that scrimped and saved to buy that home, and yet he's still living there, and he won't move out, and they can't get him out because they have to evict him. He's not just trespassing. And because California has some of the strictest eviction laws, and because of COVID moratorium on eviction, for the last year, they haven't been able to get to and in the home they own, they paid cash for, because the person they bought it from refuses to leave. And of course, the laws don't favor the person who actually owns the property. It's favoring who's ever camped out there. Shouldn't happen. But see, you guys, that's what happens when you ask the government to solve your problems. When you ask government to solve problems like, I don't want to pay my rent, you end up with one-size-fits-all policies where you have outcomes you don't plan on and situations that are terrible, all run by people who are sitting there caring about their feelings, legislating from feelings. I don't know exactly sometimes where we're going to end up at the end of the day. I hear a lot of people talking about divorce of the states, things like that as far as that goes. I don't know. But what I do know is this. I'll be at a rally tomorrow at the Capitol in Frankfurt, and I am speaking there. And it's about church and faith coming back in to our culture and grabbing back our culture and faith under attack. And I invite you out there to listen, because I challenge you this. What we're doing isn't working. Even if you think everything I just said was terrible and I'm a terrible person and I hate poor people, which, I was homeless for like 3-4 months and living in my car at one point in my life. I don't hate poor people. I've been a poor person. By some measures, maybe I am poor now. Maybe I'm not. I don't know. I sit there and I count my blessings. I don't count my struggles. But I can tell you this much. At least look around and see our mental health declining in the country. People are unhappy. Mass shootings occurring. You're seeing outrage in the streets and rioting. Whatever's causing it, doesn't matter. You're seeing all these things. And you got to look around and say, it isn't working. We need morals. We need values. And those can't be legislated by the government either. And you can't say, well, we like the government legislating it because we'll just grab control of the reins and we'll take over. Like we're hearing at the beginning. We don't want to control and rein in the governor because one day a Republican might take over. That's not the way to think. That's not what liberty is. Liberty is the freedom to get government out of your life. It is not the freedom from your responsibilities or the repercussions for your actions, but getting government out of your life and saying, hey, we are free to make our own choices. So look around and say, the country isn't that much better. It's not happier. Certainly not. This is not a happy way of living life. Look at the outcomes, look at the results, and realize maybe we have it wrong now. That's it for today, guys. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for sharing. Come by the coffee shop sometime. Check us out online, brewedco.com. This is also a podcast on Spotify and Apple. You can check that out. Check out prior ones. I thank you guys so much for joining me today. We'll do another one on Monday. I don't know what time. I'm a small business owner, as I said, so at whatever time strikes my fancy. Thanks, guys.